All right. So it's Erik here with Josh Points, and we have probably the most interesting way that that you finally found a franchise, and we've joked along the way who fired who. You claimed that I fired you, but I thought you fired me. Do you
No.
remember how that really goes?
Yeah. Well, we met through Joe Ruggieri, and Joe's has been a nice resource here in Raleigh, North Carolina. He owns Club Pilates, and introduced me to you. And then I think you pitched me like, I don't know, 4 or 5 ideas. And at the end of it, I didn't really love any of those ideas. And then you said, well, I don't think there's a franchise out there for you.
Well,
So, I mean,
I think it was like, I think it was like
indirectly saying you're fired. Maybe that's like indirectly saying it. But I mean, from the other end of the perspective, it's pretty much like, all right, well, I think that there's got to be some other way out there. There can't be none out there for me. So, yeah.
the way I remembered, I think I told you about 400 or 500 franchises.
I can name them, I think.
and then and then there wasn't anything out there from my perspective. I'm like, what you want, I don't have right now. And it's very unique. There's nothing out there that I really had. And so I'm like, do I just keep stringing you along and helping you kind of feel like you're getting the itch scratched of finding franchises out there? Or do I just shoot straight with you and like, man, I really don't have anything. I really don't have anything for you. And so that's how I like to see it, as laid off, not fired, just laid off.
Yeah, well, I mean, I certainly would say in hindsight at this point, laid off would be a better description. But the day of, it certainly felt like I got canned.
Yeah, and I don't think you're alone with that, because I am honest. I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like, Erik, he missed out on 2 franchises, and he had opportunity and missed out on them. He's like, what's next? I'm like, there's nothing else out there like these 2 that you just missed. You did just miss 2 of the best ones out there. And
Right.
one of them was Club Pilates. And
Yeah.
so, and that's pretty much gone everywhere. And he had opportunity, but I was just honest with him the other day. But I said, anytime and I told him about you. I said, there's a guy that I used to work with that I had this exact same conversation with, but it wasn't the right time, or that I didn't have the right opportunity at the right time for him. And then, months later, you either saw my video or I reached out to you, or probably both. I think I remember intentionally reaching out to you.
Yeah, no, you actually read out to me, because I will not deny this one, but I think that as part of your platform of kind of automatic reminders, I got a bunch of them. Like, the guy fired me. What am I still getting these things for? So I unsubscribed at that point, only because I did feel like that there wasn't much out there. And so, but yeah, very happy that you were proactive and pursued me at a later date, because I think that that certainly was an investment that I ended up making, which was hopefully turns out to be a good one.
And I think that's something that a lot of people, and I can see how it feels that way. And whenever you stop working with a coach for whatever reason, whether you're trying to lose weight or whatever, and the coach, there's no relationship there anymore. You're just getting some emails. You're like, I don't really have that relationship with you anymore. But from the coach's perspective, it's like, I really want to help them. I know I can't help them right now, but I really want to help them. So I think we beat that horse to death. That we still don't know who fired who, but the result is everybody's friends, and we found you a great franchise. And you had to act fast on it too. I mean, because when good opportunities come up, talk about that a little bit. I mean, it wasn't like you could just sit there and dilly-dally along. It was like, hey, Josh, I've got something for you. Here's what it is.
Yeah.
What do you think? Tell me about that process that you went through.
I think that, well, I think a couple things. One, when we did reconnect, there's a little bit of like, I think trepidation would be a good word, right? Like, hey, what's really going on here? And it turned out that it was as altruistic as it was supposed to be. I mean, you absolutely were thinking in my best interest at that point, which I appreciate now. But at the time, you don't really know what it's could be a snake oil salesman, or it could be a good person. So you don't know the answer to that. And So then you put me in touch with the franchise and kind of started going through the process. And there were a couple of little hiccups in terms of timing and stuff like that. And they had their first discovery day, and I didn't know if I was going to make it. I actually committed to go see another franchise like the day after this discovery day. And you were really honest and just said, well, hey, look, it's fine. If you don't go, you're not going to get the territory that you want, right? And so that was great feedback, and I rearranged my travel plans and made it, and ended up making the investment. So yeah, I think that was the directness at that point was very much appreciated and was very helpful.
And that's uncommon advice that I give, because that's not the case most of the time. But you were there. There was somebody else from your exact same market at the same discovery day.
Yep.
And it worked out great because you both bought, and I told you, Raleigh's a hot market. And the same with Denver.
Yep.
Denver's the same way. They sell out really fast. Raleigh's, one of those. And so I said, you know what, if you want to crack at it, you need to get in there. And you did, and it worked out great. And that's a great thing about working with a franchise that has the best interest of everybody in mind too, because you're able to get what you wanted, they got what they wanted, and then you grow a market together.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, the second half of that chapter we'll find out about, but as it sits right now, I mean, happy with the investment, and hopefully the business takes off like we both think it can.
So we'll have to have in 2 years, we'll have another interview. And I want to do that because it's fun to follow and see people's path along the way. And it's not always going to be great. There are bumps along the way in any franchise. So how did you go from kind of that research phase to like, I'm ready to buy phase? Because a lot of people don't, they think they're ready to buy, but they're really not. When did you kind of know that you were ready to do something? And I think you were ready earlier on than a lot of people I talk with.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that, I did I did do a lot of research, and I think that everybody should. And you've got to kind of determine what type of business that it is that you're looking for, the attributes that you like and don't like. All those things are really important. And that's a little bit of an introspective process and going through it all, right? And then, when it comes to really making the investment, you've got to, this is the gut call, right? At some point, things can, it doesn't matter what business that you're looking at, you can make a pro forma look in whatever manner that you want it to look, right? You can make it as grim or as rosy as you choose, but ultimately you're going to be left with the gut decision on whether or not you're going to make the investment of not only your time and effort, but your financial being too. So, and that's a hard one. It's a hard one. It is not for the weak of heart. I can say that for sure.
No, you're absolutely right. And a lot of people, I think that, a lot of people don't move forward eventually because they just can't make a decision. And you are taking a risk on yourself, but you are betting on yourself at the same time. So I see, as I see it from the outside looking in, those that would bet on themselves tend to move forward more often than those that don't have that much belief in themselves to be able to make it work.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I mean, I'm trying to think. I actually read, hold on, let me pull up my computer screen here because I had a great one that somebody sent me earlier today. Just was a great quote about entrepreneurialism. And give me 1 second. But I read it, and it was one of those things where I was like, wow, that's really, really good. But no, I think that the investment side of it is hard. So it says entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so you can live the rest of your life like most people can't. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that owning or investing in a franchise is for the light of heart, right? It's a big decision.
It is. And I've been listening to more and more podcasts and more of the entrepreneur experts out there like Grant Cardone and Gary Vee and, I think even Richard Branson, some of these guys that talk a lot about entrepreneurship. they talk about that. Don't, just because you come into a lot of money, just don't spend it all. Or, you have to get involved, and you have to have some pain, and then there's a reward. And it's definitely true in franchising. At least it was for me. I put in a lot of long days, long nights, early mornings, especially early on, until you get to the point where you go from owner to investor. And then you can start pulling back, but that means less money for you as well. So there's a give and take on everything.
Yep, absolutely.
What were some of those key things, like when you first started thinking about franchising? What were some of those key things that you're like, I want, these 3 things in a franchise?
Yeah, that's a good thing. I don't know. I think that the franchising world is a little bit confusing in some of the terminology. I think that semi-absentee and absentee, and I've talked with you about this, are 2 models that you hear in the franchising world. And initially, I don't know, but I've never heard the term absent used in a really positive way, right? Like if you were absent from school or you're absent-minded, it's kind of a word that has a negative connotation with it, just by nature. And but as I kind of went through the franchising discovery world, what I found is that, in fact, semi-absentee and absentee sometimes means scalable, right? And that's a really big thing, because I think that there certainly are franchises which really are a job replacement avenue. And that's great. Some people really like that. They can build great businesses and be tremendously successful. But my goal as a person was not to just be the face of the business, but really to create and develop teams that could go on to do great things. And so, but it took a little bit of a while to learn that was fit into more of a semi-absentee to absentee model.
Yeah, and a lot of people I deal with want that that semi-absentee or absentee, and that's why when I start working with people, I want to know, that's why I phrase the question: what do you want in a franchise? Because people don't know how to verbalize that, because it's franchise terminology, absentee and semi-absentee. But basically, you want to build something that's scalable, like you just said, that you don't have to. The business is not built around you. You can build teams, and they can build the business. Yeah,
that was an important part for me. Yeah.
Yeah. What are the things that that you didn't want in a franchise?
Well, I didn't really look at much. I didn't really care for the food world very much, just for a number of reasons. But I would say, so food, I kind of ruled that out. I think a business that I felt like it could be replaced easily with technology wasn't something that I really had much interest in. And then, at some point, the people that you have the opportunity to work with, that becomes a really important part. Whatever that person is, right? Meaning if you're really technical oriented, then maybe you want to work around technical people, right? But if you're a little bit more abstract in nature, then that's not going to really create really good energy for you on a daily basis. So, I think that just kind of knowing yourself and what it is and the people that you want to be associated with, I think that's a really important part of the business. And that's one of the things that it takes a little while to learn. Yeah,
definitely. As you look back, what were your biggest fears? A lot of people don't really like to talk about their fears, but they're always there. But did you have anything that were kind of big fears as you were getting into business?
I mean, I think that it's still the same fear. I mean, I'm early on in the process of starting this franchise in the Raleigh market. Hey, am I gonna go broke doing this, right? And not trying to say this is a scare tactic, but that's a possibility in all of this, right? Like, in my head, I don't find it to be probable, but it's certainly possible. So I think that that's always a real fear, because you're putting, again, your time, your effort, and your assets in play for something that may or may not be proven yet, right? I mean, somebody out there had to buy Kentucky Fried Chicken's first bag of, fry batter, right? And, there's certainly guys out there that own, hundreds of these restaurants that are doing great doing that, right? But there's always that initialness of the newness and whether or not this idea is going to work. So, yeah, I think that's still a genuine concern, and then the financial ramifications of that.
I think that was very well said. Most people don't verbalize that very well to me because they don't really want to talk about it. But once I uncover that a little bit, everybody is thinking what's worst case scenario. And when you actually allow yourself to go down that road, you see what it is and what's probable and what's not. And it's interesting. It's a good exercise to go through. I look at it every time I get into a new business, what's worst case scenario. And as I get older in life, I'm taking less and less risks. It's just the way it is. But so no, that's very well articulated. So thanks for sharing that. And by the way, we bought the same franchise. So those things it's a newer franchise. They've got a very good track record on a small number of stores, but it's still a risk. And you and I are both okay with that. And, we both looked at our best and worst case scenarios and the probability of each. I'm probably not going to be the best franchise, but I'm probably not going to, lose everything either.
Yeah. You hope not, right? I mean, that's I don't think, that this is, I don't think that the franchise is a horse and buggy franchise, right? But somebody bought the last horse and buggy out there and you just hope that it's not you.
What's interesting with that is as I've gone I'm on the inside of this franchise, and that's what I love to help people because I get on the inside of it, whether it's me personally or someone like you. If I wasn't a part of this, I get to know what it's like on the inside. And from a personal standpoint, as I've seen the training and I've seen the actual follow-up and the things that they said that they would do early on through the sales process has really been, from my standpoint, has exceeded my expectations along the way, even from the finance standpoint.
I would agree with that. I mean, the store manager just finished up her first week of training and is in her second one. She had nothing but really positive things to say, which I think is great. I think that, that's one of the things I think in the franchise process, which is not often discussed. I mean, you've got the concept and how it's going to play out in the marketplace. But part of the things that aren't always discussed very well is, the importance of the franchisor and what type of organization do they really have, right? Because you could have a great concept that has a franchisor that's not very well organized and doesn't have the support systems in place for its franchisees. And that's going to cause a franchise to not do as well as it could have, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's one part. I think one of the other things that you hear a lot about with the franchisor is they're so focused on selling franchises that they forget the importance of executing the franchises and the franchisee's best interest, right? Because, hey, look, if there's 100 franchises out there and they're really successful, then that means that the one that you own has value on a second market, right? You can sell the thing off. But if there's 10,000 of them out there, then your business isn't very valuable all of a sudden. So, I think that's an important part of, the whole process is, you got to look at the concept. But then you also have to look at the franchisor, and that's the part that's harder to really determine whether or not they really have their act together or not, because it's a limited interaction at that point, right? It's not really until you get into the process do you find out just how good or bad they are.
Yep. And most of the time, whether we like it or not, you don't really find that out until you're on the other side of the process.
Yeah, you own it at that point. Like it's your business.
Yeah. And that's why talking to franchisees is so important. That's what I do personally. And I know, and you did. And even in this particular concept, it wasn't easy because they didn't have a lot of them and they were getting calls like crazy. Yeah. But you could pick up some things here and there that you knew that they were being authentic and they weren't just telling you everything's rosy.
Yeah. And I would say, I talk to other businesses and, one thing that would come up every now and then is this idea that, the franchise is in a pretty good spot right now, right? And that's usually somebody that was an early adopter in the process, and they had to go through a lot of pain and agony to get there. And oftentimes, all that really means is that the franchisee's business is good right now. But that doesn't mean that the franchisor has done any better in terms of their operations or anything else like that. It just means that the concept is sticky in the community that it's in.
It's so important to ask the right question in the right context to make sure you're getting the answer for the question. Because so many people ask a question like, how's a franchise, or just very generic questions. And or if it's just related to them, are you making money? And if they're making money, that's great. But what about everybody else? So you want to ask questions like you were talking about to expand beyond just a particular franchisee, but the franchise base as a whole, and then about the franchisor. And I love it when there's concepts, when there's inside information, meaning like this, like, you know, what's happening on the inside up to a certain point, because you're not open yet, but you had someone gone through training. You probably have experienced this one offers in-house financing, or basically in-house financing. And
Yeah.
is it as easy as they said it would be? Because they sure made it sound like it was going to be pretty easy, but
Yeah.
as easy as they said. And from my standpoint, it's easier than they said it would be. It's
Right. Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
So, I love it. Any, I think this is helpful for people out there that are, starting to look at franchises. Maybe they're at some, any point in the pre-buying process. Any advice that you would have for anybody at any stage that you think would be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the big things is to go through. Don't get so focused on the analytical numbers of the process, because there's a lot of other intangibles that become really important. The people that you have the opportunity to work with, the franchisor, all of these things go into the decision. And I think that a lot of times, because I've talked to a number of different people, that they get so focused on the mathematics that they lose sight of all the other things that go along with this. And ultimately, business, whether it's a franchise or a non-franchise, I mean, it's a living, breathing organism, right? And it's going to have good days and bad days, and it's going to have all those things that go along with it. And it's not all just math, right? And so, yeah, I think that's a really important part. And then, finding people in the process that'll be helpful. But because I think that having gone through it, there's a lot of snake oil salesmen in the marketplace. And that's scary, and you don't know who's a snake oil salesman and who's not. But at some point, you start to find that there's good people out there, and when you find some good people, you trust them and kind of continue to allow them to guide you through the process. And so I think that's really important when you're going through all of it.
Well, geez, I don't have anything to add. That was really good. I'm sure a lot of people are going to find it helpful. So next time I see you, will probably be at some convention somewhere.
Yeah,
and
that'd be good.
Then we'll have part 2 after your
who fired who. Yeah. But,
yes.
No, I mean, I think that, I think Eric, we're very helpful in the process. Certainly, I think for people that are going through this process, you're a good resource. But I think that also being a good resource is also saying to allow people to go look at other, whether it be brokers or whatever, because the more people that you interact with in this confusing world, I think that the better off you'll be when it comes to making a decision.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think that's important.
I agree. Well, thanks again.
All right, Eric. Thank you, man. Have a great day.
You
All
too.
right. Talk to you. All right. Bye.